The Insta360 One R just came out with its third major update since this camera first debuted in February 2020. There are lots of new features to dig into, so in this video we're going to talk about each of those features and have lots of sample footage to back it up. This is a feature-packed action camera and there's lots to talk about, so this by no means is a comprehensive review of this camera. So stay tuned to subscribe if you'd like to see the full review of the Insta360 One R, plus lots of comparisons to the GoPro Hero 8 Black and the brand new GoPro Hero 9. So in case you're not familiar with this camera, this is the Insta360 One R. It just came out in February 2020, so it's a relatively new camera, and it's supposed to be an action camera in addition to a 360 camera. That's because this is a modular camera, so if you take it apart, the battery is right here. Then you have the actual camera itself with a monitoring screen on the other side. And then this part is a lens. So there are two lenses that you can choose from. One is a regular 4K lens and the other is a 360 lens. So if you ever want to shoot in 360, you don't have to have a separate camera for that. All you have to do is have this extra lens mod and attach that to the camera to be able to shoot 360. All right, let's talk about that firmware update. So the firmware update just came out in September 2020. And it's the third one ever since this camera came out. And so it's kind of similar to Fujifilm. Fujifilm releases a lot of firmware updates after the camera is released, and those firmware updates really add some nice features to enhance the functionality of the camera. So I love that Insta360 is into that model because that really signifies to me that they're taking customer feedback and making improvements through those firmware updates. There are two main ways to do that firmware update. You can either connect the camera to your smartphone and do the firmware update by connecting it to the app, or you can connect the camera directly to your computer and do the firmware update that way. So what are the features we're getting in this version 3 of the firmware update? So the first difference I really noticed had to do with audio. So the Insta360 One R has really great internal microphones if you want to use it without an external mic, but if you want the very best sound, then you really have to add an external microphone. And that can be done by using the included mic jack adapter, which is really tiny and allows you to add an external microphone such as this Joby Wavo mobile shotgun mic. So this is the preferred vlogging setup that I like to use for action cameras, and when I first used it with the Insta360 One R before the firmware update, I noticed that whenever I connected an external microphone, the audio levels were a little too low straight at a camera. So I'm reviewing all of the test footage and realizing that a lot of the external microphone footage seems to be really low. It's kind of like the levels are really down in the camera. Alright, so I plugged in that USB-C audio adapter to the Insta360 One R, and now I have the Joby Wavo microphone plugged in. Next up we have the Rode Video Micro. Next up is the Aduttage mic. Well, I did the firmware update for that Insta360 One R and also got a haircut. So now we're going to do a test to see if that external microphone problem has been fixed. First microphone up is the Rode Video Micro that is on top of the camera. I'm going to go ahead and tap it to verify that it's connected, and it does not have the windscreen on it. Next mic is the Joby Wavo mobile microphone. I'm going to go ahead and tap it to verify that it's connected, and this one looks a lot like the Rode Video Micro, but it's a lot cheaper. The next big change has to do with the video format of all those video files that are recorded in camera. Prior to this firmware update, whenever you recorded a video to the Insta360 One R, it recorded to a proprietary file, an INSV file, that can only be read by the Insta360 Studio. So you had to do a lot of legwork to process those video files in the Studio software and then export it to whatever other video processing software you were using. So it required a lot of extra post-processing time to process those files in the Insta360 Studio software and then export them and then re-import them into Final Cut or Adobe Premiere or whatever video editing software that you were using. Now after this update, all video files are default recorded as an MP4 format, which is very useful. That means that you don't have to process those files within the Insta360 Studio software. The only catch is that most of those MP4 videos do not have Insta360's proprietary flow state stabilization applied to the videos, unless you're shooting in basic mode, and basic mode doesn't quite give you all the functionality that pro mode does. So you still have to shoot in pro mode and process those videos in the Insta360 Studio software to get the best stabilization out of this camera. The next change is that there are new AI or IQ enhancements to video. So the bitrate is slightly higher in certain shooting scenarios. Insta360 added a vivid mode as your default profile whenever you're shooting video. So now you have 3 video files to choose from when you're shooting with the Insta360 One R. You can shoot in log, standard, or vivid. If you plan to do a lot of post-processing to your videos, then you want to be shooting in log, but I like the ability to shoot in vivid if you want to do a quick export of videos. Some of the best functionality of this camera comes when you connect it to the Insta360 app on your phone. You're able to do some creative, quick edits to your videos for sharing to social media. So if you shoot in that vivid profile, that saves you some post-processing time that you'd have to do otherwise. So when it's connected as a webcam, you can either use it with the regular 4K lens or with a 360 lens. When you're shooting with the 4K lens, there's a really nice feature with this camera where it's shooting in such a wide mode that it's able to zoom in and follow you around as you're moving in the picture. The effect is similar to a gimbal or a camera operator following you around as you move around a scene. If you shoot with the 360 mod, you get a split screen effect in your webcam. So the top portion shows you what one lens is seeing and the bottom portion shows you what the other lens is seeing. So that's pretty cool if you're shooting in a really environmental setting and you want to be able to show your audience all around you. Related to this feature, you can now also live stream in 360. So we don't do a lot of live streams, but if you do, and again, you're shooting somewhere environmental and you want your audience to see everything around you, then shooting with that 360 mod is going to be really handy. And it works with Facebook Live, Instagram Live, YouTube Live. Let us know in the comments if you'd like to see an example of that, and perhaps we'll hold a live streaming session in 360. And the final updates to talk about have to do with the still photography modes on this camera. So even though the Insta360 One R is largely a video camera, you can shoot stills with it, and you can shoot either JPEGs or RAW images. So with this firmware update, you now have the ability to shoot in pure shot mode. And pure shot mode is basically an enhanced HDR mode where it smooths out a lot of the noise or grain that's in your images if you're shooting in low lighting, and it enhances the color and some of the highlights in the shadows. Just bear in mind that if you shoot in the pure shot mode, you'll have to do your photo editing on the Insta360 app on your phone. That functionality is not available on the Insta360 Studio on your computer, unfortunately. And the final new mode to discuss is AquaVision, or underwater color enhancement. This applies when you're using either the 360 mod or the 4K mod in an underwater scenario, because believe it or not, this camera is waterproof. Not the microphone, but the camera by itself. You can plunge it into water and actually go diving or swimming with it. And if you've ever taken photos or videos underwater, you know that the color balance is really tough to nail, because looking at things underwater is a completely different experience, and a lot of times the camera doesn't quite interpret those colors properly. So with this new AquaVision, all of that footage or those photos that you take underwater will have a better color tone to them. Alright, so those are the major features that are most important or most interesting to me after this Insta360 One R firmware update. But now I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Have you tried out any of these new firmware updates and features? What do you think about them? And what other features would you like Insta360 to enhance in an upcoming firmware update? And if you'd like to see the full review of this Insta360 One R, I have that video coming up really soon, along with lots of comparisons to the GoPro Hero 8 and the brand new GoPro Hero 9. So if you'd like to see how all these cameras perform in a vlogging or action camera scenario, then please subscribe and stay tuned for all those videos coming soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.